Yo, what is up guys, it's Ghost here, welcome back to the channel. It's high tide we had a bit of an update for Stormgate, so in this video we're going to be going over everything that has come out news-wise about the game in the recent past couple of weeks or so. So we have a brand new update for the 3v3 mode to go over. We've also got some interesting tidbits, some commentary from the community manager. He's been addressing some of the community concerns. There was also a little bit of a patch, pretty small patch, but with a rather significant change within it. And then to cap off the video, I want to talk a little bit about the future of the channel here and some things that may possibly be changing a little bit. So if you're interested in the channel in general, then make sure that you stick around to the end. So let's go ahead and begin with the patch notes. This one came out a couple of weeks ago, and this may have kind of flown under the radar for you guys. And there's really only one major change in these patch notes to speak about for competitive, and that is the following. For Plague Axes, they will now apply Infest if the caster is on the Shroud instead of the target. Additionally, the research time has been rolled back from 90 seconds to 45, that's what it was before, and the Plague Axe's cost has been reduced from 100 Luminite and 100 Therium down to 50 of each. So this was a change that came in initially with 0.1, right? They changed the Plague Axes so that instead of just infecting units all over the map, they would only infect units on Shroud, but it just so happened to be whenever the target unit was on Shroud, not the casting unit, aka the Gaunt. So I think this change makes a lot more sense. Now you're not going to have people sort of stutter-stepping around the edge of the Shroud, not stepping on there so as not to get the infest on themselves. As long as your Gaunt is on your Shroud, they will be infesting units. Make sure you are careful with the effigy though for any infernal players out there. Obviously, if you were spawning the effigy on the target, like on the enemy units before, in order to get the infest effect off, now you're going to need to put it on your own units, which I think we can all agree makes a lot more sense. Other than that, there are some changes here, but they're really not worth writing home about. There are some bug fixes and some updates, a couple of changes to Castile in the co-op mode, so this was a pretty small patch in general. Okay, so with that said, next thing I want to talk about is the new 3v3 mode. So some of you may have seen an update that came out for this. Of course, we've all been waiting for the 3v3 mode. Frostgiant initially said it was going to be coming in October. That has now changed, and we're going to get into all of that. But they didn't actually drop this one on Reddit, I don't think, and also not on the official Stormgate website. They only dropped it on Steam, in fact. It's a pretty lengthy article, but I picked through all of these significant things here. So let's just jump straight into this. So first of all, the new 3v3 game mode is actually going to be called Team Mayhem. And as they put it in their own words, it's a name chosen because it embodies the quick, frenetic multiplayer fun that we are aiming for. So I think most RTS players who think 2v2 or 3v3, they don't think about some objective-based mode, they just think, kill the enemy 3 players as fast as you can. That's what 2v2 is, that's what 3v3 is, etc. So they want to really, remove this mode from that, so it's abundantly clear that this is something new. So this initial Team Mayhem playtest, it's only going to be a closed test by invitation only, and it's going to be confidential. That is to say, it's going to be under an NDA, and basically what it comes down to is Frostgiant want more time to cook. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty good thing. Any more time that they get to really invest into making any experience that they released to be more polished, I think is a great thing for the game. We've all seen how people reacted to Stormgate in general, with a lot of the assets and a lot of the features of the game being as unpolished and unfinished as they are. So it looks like Stormgate and Frostgiant have sort of taken that to heart. They want some more time on this Team Mayhem mode, and so they're going to be doing that. It's not going to be releasing this October for everybody as planned. Instead, there is going to be some very limited playtesting taking place, and then it looks like they're going to be releasing it next year. I'm fine with it. I don't think there's too many people sort of saying, oh, but I really wanted to play this mode right now. I kind of think most people just went, why are you releasing another mode when there's so much work to be done on the game? So I don't think it's going to affect the community, let's say, in a negative way. So that's great. So with that said, how is this Team Mayhem game mode actually going to work? So let's have a quick run over the initial rules that they've outlined for us. So, small disclaimer here, these are the rules that they set for the game mode when they started the testing. Some of these have changed, and we'll get into that in a minute. So first of all, you're going to have 2 teams of 3 players that start on opposite sides of the map. Each team has a heavily defended base in a very safe starting area, and then your starting structure, aka your headquarters, will automatically generate Luminite over time and it's going to be invulnerable. So there is no knockout via player structure elimination, so there's no way you can lose your headquarters, you can't lose all of your workers because there are no workers, it just automatically generates the Luminite, so essentially there's no way that you as a player can be eliminated individually from the game. So how do you win then, you might ask? Well, each team also shares an allied core structure that is the main win-loss condition, so this will be placed, I believe, somewhere in front of your base, and that's the main objective that your enemy are trying to kill, and you are, of course, trying to destroy theirs. There are going to be creep camps on the map, but these are going to act as map objectives, and they will grant victory points and Therium. These victory points then increase the amount of damage that your team's units will deal to the enemy core. There's also going to be a major boss creep located somewhere on the map, and once defeated, it will march towards the enemy core to attack it, ignoring enemy units along the way. There will be no workers or starting scout units, so they've eliminated the micromanagement of workers. All building, training, and upgrading is going to be handled through the quick macro panel instead. You're going to be able to build anywhere within your team's vision. And then in order to make each hero and their hero faction feel distinct, each of them are going to be sort of refined down to 5 units, 5 structures, and 5 unit specific upgrades with a max supply of 100 for initial testing, with additional upgrades acting as sort of tier gates. There's going to be no top bar abilities for this mode, structures can be set to auto-train units, and the expansions are limited to 1 structure, sort of similar to a collection array, which is placed directly on top of a Luminite mine that auto-harvests. So this game mode, to me, sounds a lot more similar to a MOBA, where you don't really have to worry about the macro side of the game. Like they said, there's going to be auto-training for units, you don't have any workers, not to mine, not to build buildings. Whenever you want to expand, you just place one of these headquarter structures down on top of a Luminite mine, and it's just going to auto-harvest, right? You're not going to have to put any workers there or anything like that. For anybody who's played a game like Battle Aces or even Zero Space, actually, which are a couple of upcoming RTSs, those games kind of do away with a lot of this stuff. So Zero Space specifically, that has this feature where you just build a certain building on an expansion and it will just auto mine. Battle Aces does it too, you just hit a key on the keyboard, it'll just throw down the expansion in like a pre-proposed position, and then the next position, all of these set locations, and the same thing for upgrades in that game as well, right? If you want to tech up to tier 2 or tier 3, you just hit a key on the keyboard, and that game, it really is much more about microing units, map control, and tactics rather than macroing. And it sounds like Stormgate and Frost Giant are sort of trying to go for that kind of thing. Similarly here with the creep camps out on the map, the more of those you take, the more damage your army is going to do to the enemy core. A lot of MOBA mechanics coming into play here as well, and the same thing goes with that boss that is located somewhere on the map, and once you kill it, it's going to march towards the enemy core and attack it. That really gives me MOBA vibes as well. So that is what they started off with for testing there. They have been testing this game mode internally for some time, but there were a few things that they've had to try and fix up that people have really complained about. So first of all, people were kind of confused as to how you harvest Therium, because you've got this starting building that automatically harvests Luminite for you. Whenever you expand, you plop down another one of them that harvests Luminite as well, and this sort of led to people just building tier 1 units and sort of snowballing, especially with 3 players, whereby, you know, if the enemy team started to tech up, they were just severely punished for that. So I think they are looking into making some of those higher tier choices and teching up in general a little bit more powerful, and they also want to better explain to players how you can actually harvest Therium, or gain Therium, I guess, in this game mode. Another thing that people complained about is that building an expansion lacks strategic depth. This is something I've seen critiqued again on Battle Aces and on Zero Space, because you don't have to make any of those decisions anymore. Normally when you expand somewhere, you have to think of the positioning of that expansion. Do you want to build it somewhere between the Luminite mine and the Therium so that your workers can also walk up to the Therium depending on the map? Do you want to build it at a right angle? Do you want to build it to the left? Do you want to build it to the right, etc.? There are lots of things that need to be considered depending on the map, depending on your opponent and his composition and all of that stuff. If now all you do is put it down on top of a Luminite mine just like a collection array, all of that strategic thinking goes out the window. Now, they also said they have been iterating on the victory point system. So that's the system where you kill creep camps and you get these victory points. I think it was clear that nobody really understood how this system worked. And that sort of begged the question, if nobody understands how the system worked and they're not aware of any potential advantage that they have by having these victory points, then what is the point of a victory point system being in the game at all? So what they did is they went and they changed it. So they reworked the victory point system to essentially being a massive cannon. And I'm going to be putting some artwork up of this cannon here in the background, and you're going to notice, I feel like the art style choice here for this cannon has gone in a bit of a better direction. It looks like Frostgiant have taken to heart a lot of the art criticisms that people have been throwing at them. I think it's fair to say that the majority of the community would like to see something a little bit more gritty, a little bit more realistic. It's, you know, just looking a little bit more StarCrafty to me. Is that a coincidence? Probably not, but so basically, instead of victory points, they're now calling it core battery power, and once you accrue enough battery power for your core, you'll be able to send a volley of plasma energy across the map, hitting the enemy's base, damaging their core, or maybe destroying some of their defenses. So with this mechanic, teams were able to basically pick up batteries to charge their core, and these batteries could be obtained by destroying special battery towers that spawned every few minutes in the corners of the maps. These battery towers were then intended to be like the most efficient way to directly damage the enemy's team's defenses, and they would help, you know, foster exciting team fights whenever they spawned in. So instead of the creep camps, you've got these sort of battery tower spawns, and the more of these batteries you get, you charge up a bar. Once the bar fills up, your core fires. Boom. So that's pretty interesting there. And then onto the big thing here, how are the heroes actually going to work? I know this has been something that everybody wants to know. Are heroes going to be in the 3v3 mode, which is now called Team Mayhem, of course? Answer is yes. So the way it's going to be at the moment is that they've got Blockade, they've got Malok, and they've got Castiel. So they've got one hero from each faction because they're concentrating more on the actual mechanics of the game mode rather than the hero mechanics themselves. So they've got them in there just to try things out. They all start at level 1. But it's unconfirmed, like they may have them start at level 5 or level 10. At the moment, they're just trying things out with them all being level 1 heroes. So for Blockade, you're going to get 5 different units: the Guardsman, the Crusader, the Combat Medic, the Atlas and the Evac, oh, and the Helicarrier. So 6 units for him, in fact. For Malok, you get the Fiend, the Flame Imp, the Fire Giant, the Chimera, and the Mortardon. And then for Castiel, you get the Eradicator, the Kree, the Saber, the Scythe, and the Archangel. And they are also experimenting with heroes leveling up mid-game with increases to their health, their damage, and their abilities. So similar to how the Vanguard have the veterancy, your heroes are going to level up just like in Warcraft 3 for anybody who's played that game, but it's not going to be tied to your hero's level. So like, forget about co-op. If you've been playing co-op and you've been finishing match after match and getting experience for your hero and your hero's level 10, that is not going to count in this game mode. It's going to be completely separate. At the end of a match, your hero is going to be level 1 again, and you're going to have to level him up within the next match, just to be absolutely crystal clear on that one. So I have to say, I think this game mode sounds pretty cool. It's nice to get some more information on it. Somewhat sad that it's not coming, and I'm probably not going to get the chance to try it out. I know they have said they are inviting some people to playtest, but I believe this is going to be a very small playtest segment. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as many players as we saw in the beta test and the alpha test from Stormgate of old. More likely they're going to be inviting, let's say, pro players so that they can try it out and they can sort of balance it along with their feedback and their input there. But I'm sure the game mode is going to be a lot better for it after all. Alright guys, so let's move on here. I want to reference a few comments from the community manager Gerald. So shout out to Empyrean Sky. He actually posted these over on Reddit, and these are a bunch of replies from the community manager essentially addressing the community's concerns. So whilst these haven't been official messages that they've put in a blog or some sort of an announcement, they are nevertheless coming directly from the community managers, and I thought you guys might be interested in some of these answers. Now, for most of them, we can't actually see the question being asked here because he hasn't put that in the screenshot, but you can pretty much read between the lines and extract most of the context out of Gerald's answers. So this is the first one here. He says, I go back to this. It will be far worse if no one cared. That these negative posters exist means that most of them had hopes and dreams for the future of our game and are reacting strongly because they feel like we won't be able to achieve them. We are working to prove them wrong. Our hope as a team is that we can show progress, continue responding to feedback, and work hard to make an RTS that we'll love to play for years to come. That'll take time though. So it looks like somebody was calling out people being overly negative, but I think Gerald does have a good point here, right? It would be far worse if absolutely nobody cared about the game. I think the fact that so many people feel strongly about Stormgate, even if it happens to be very negatively, is because they were hoping for a really great RTS, and I think most people out there who would, maybe some of you guys who watch this channel just to keep your eye on the game even if you're not playing it, I think most of us are hoping that the game will improve over time, and so will the player base along with it. So this guy here says, Gerald, when do we get Robo Dogs? And he says they're coming, confirmed, but I don't know exactly which patch will have them in their implementation. So by Robo Dogs, I think he means the scout for the Vanguard that actually look like robots, because if you're unaware, and you'd be forgiven for being unaware, they are actually robots. They're not biological dogs, but they don't really look like robotic dogs at all. So it sounds like that is something that's coming in the future. Now this next one here, this guy says that the patch didn't improve numbers. So what he's referring to here is the concurrent number of players on Steam, which most of you will know for Stormgate is pretty damn low. It's around 200 or 300 peak players per 24 hours, which is obviously a lot lower than I think what any of us were hoping for. This guy's sort of referring to that, hoping that the patch was going to improve those numbers. It did get a bit of a spike when the patch came out, but it has since dropped down to roughly the same numbers that it was pre-patch. But Gerald here actually says that they did. The trend line comparing to our launch peak is misleading. Numbers improved quite a bit after Hunter. So I will be very interested to see what kind of statistics they are actually looking at internally there. Of course, they're going to have way more information than what we can get just looking at SteamDB, but I don't know, man. I kind of feel like Steam doesn't lie, you know, it doesn't really lie about the number of concurrent players, and you can pretty reliably compare that to the launch of the game and all of the past sort of points of on the graph there. So, not really sure, maybe they're just trying to spin that one to make it sound a little bit more positive than it actually is. I just hope that as the game improves, people will give it a second chance or a third chance or whatever, and come back and give it another go and hopefully find some fun in it. Here's another one talking about the fact that most people seem to only care about 1v1, and I would agree, like, the main focus, it seems, has been on the 1v1 mode. That is the funnest mode, that is the most fleshed out mode, the most enjoyable mode, I would say. Gerald completely agrees here. He says, yep, there's different players, and we want to create modes to appeal to all those different player types. I work here, and I have no interest in 1v1. I'm old and my 1v1 days are behind me. I primarily want to play team games and customs and editor content, so he definitely can relate there. Here's one about the map editor. He says, getting the map editor into players' hands is something we very much look forward to, but it's not happening in the near term. It looks like, unfortunately, they just have more important things to be working on. I think it is definitely up there. It is one of those core pillars that they want to be in the game, but, you know, I think we can agree, most of us, that there are just other things that have to take priority. And just to expand on that here, he says part of the challenge is that tools are still being built and core game functionality is still being made, so the work that would go into making the editor presentable and workable by the public needs to happen later. An order of operations thing. Some players said, why did they focus so much on 1v1 instead of the campaign from the beginning, for example, but you can't start building a campaign until after you have units and heroes and maps built, etc. So there he's just giving a bit of an explanation as to why, like, the 1v1 mode, you know, is the most fleshed out game mode, because that's what you start with, right? And that's the reason you don't really need so much stuff around that, as I think Tim Morton said, to stand that up, as he put it, and get that functional. Okay, finally, just to cap things off, guys, I want to talk a little bit about the future of the channel. I've noticed a lot of you guys in the comment section saying, why don't you cover other RTS games? Aren't you interested in those? Because what's going to happen if Stormgate dies? I am certainly interested in other RTS titles, such as Battle Aces, such as Zero Space, and so you can probably expect to see those here on the channel. Now, the name of the channel is, of course, Stormgate Central. That may be changing in the future. I have been thinking, and really just wanted to run this idea by you guys, on possibly changing the name to RTS Central instead. That way it won't be confusing if you find, let's say, a Battle Aces video on a channel called Stormgate Central, right? That's kind of convoluted and just weird. Let me know what you guys would feel about that. There is an upcoming playtest, guys, for Battle Aces starting on, I believe it's, yeah, November the 7th. So if you haven't gotten in yet, you can sign up on playbattleaces.com. I have played in one of the betas before. It was a lot of fun. It's a very different RTS than Stormgate. I feel whereas Stormgate is sort of trying to do everything with this 3 or really 4-pronged approach with like the campaign, and then you've got 1v1, and then you've got this new Team Mayhem mode, you've got the co-op, you've got the editor, you've got all of these things going on. Battle Aces is simplifying everything. It's just got this one mode, but it really is an extremely polished and enjoyable experience, at least from what I've played from it. So I am going to be playing in that beta test, and I may be putting some videos up here on the channel. Basically, I want to try and be a realist, and whilst I hope the best for Stormgate, and I'm going to continue to cover Stormgate leading up to the full release of the game, you know, being realistic, there is always a chance that even once it releases with its 1.0, the game flops, nobody plays it, and you can't really argue with numbers, right? It may come to the point where Frost Giant just has to can the game, and I don't want to be left here with a channel called Stormgate Central and no games to make content about. So I don't want to be like a doomsayer or anything like that. I really, really hope it's not going to come to that, and I will continue covering Stormgate into the future. But I just think it's a good idea to maybe expand into other RTS games as well, especially when I imagine you are somewhat similar to myself and probably play other RTSs as well, just like I do. So let me know what you think below, guys. As always, cheers for hanging out and watching the video. Take it easy, and I will see you guys in the next one.